All right, here we are with Joshua Kerievsky. Joshua, it's really my pleasure to have you in this session. It's a great opportunity to have you here. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much, Samuel. Pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Joshua, the goal today is actually to discuss a little bit about lean thinking, agility, and bring your stories that you have in your new book, The Joy of Agility. I also believe that joy is really a very important part of our job, and making an agile environment. We need to be happy in there, and I think that's really important. In the end, we stay probably more time working than with our families, um, and it's really important. And before we jump into the conversation, I'd like to first to express my appreciation for everything that you have been doing since we met the first time in 2009 when you came for the Achilles conference. To today is to remember the content of your talk, talking about how painters would refactor their paints until they become like an art. And I remember your analogy with software development and coding. And then years later, you brought modern agile, which I think it's an awesome perspective of really modern agility. I think you brought or you put in a deserved place things like psychological safety and making people feel awesome. I think those are really important, and probably I guess that you brought something from them to your book, because making people feel awesome, we create joy. So thank you very much for this. I hope you enjoyed the talk. And I'd like to start by asking you, what made you write this new book, The Joy of Agility?
Oh, yeah, thanks. It's first of all, pleasure to be back talking with you. I remember we met so many years ago in 2009 in Florianopolis, so that was
Yes.
fantastic. I loved that was my first trip to Brazil, loved it, and then went back many times more. So I miss it. Uh, so what prompted me to write this book was that I really felt that people needed to have a shared understanding of what the word agile means. Today, I think if you ask 100 people, what does agile mean? You'll get 100 different answers.
Hmm.
And in fact, I believe that the dictionary already points us to the definition of the adjective agile.
Hmm.
It's really not mysterious at all. The definition of agile is in the dictionary. I prefer the Merriam-Webster dictionary, which is it's really an American dictionary. It says that to be agile means to be marked by a ready ability to move with quick, easy grace, or
Perfect.
to have a quick, resourceful, and adaptable character.
Hmm.
And those definitions I find are pretty much like right on target for what agility really is. That's it. Now then, how do we apply that to our particular profession? How do we apply those words to the sport that we do, the surgery we perform,
Hmm.
the software system we create, right? How do we then become quick, and how do we make things easy, and can we be graceful, right? So the whole book really is a focus on the word agile and the joy that comes from actually being agile,
Hmm.
from experiencing that time when you have an obstacle and you're able to overcome it, you're able to get around the obstacle, you're able to solve a difficult problem, or just to deal with the unexpected situation by being agile. That
Hmm.
is, to me, a celebration, right? That's a joyful thing.
Hmm.
So the
Like
book's
being able to respond to change, but in a safer manner, right?
correct. Yes, safety is also always a factor, and yeah, so a book's filled with stories, just stories of actual people, teams, organizations that demonstrate agility. I wanted to share my favorite stories of people that wouldn't even necessarily use the word agile. They wouldn't say, I'm agile. They just did things. And if you look at what they did, you'd say, that is agility right there.
Please, could you share one of these stories? I would love to hear it.
Yeah, one of my favorites is a very simple story about Sir Richard Branson, right?
Uh,
The
I
famous
love.
billionaire entrepreneur, yeah, Virgin Galactic, Virgin Records, Virgin Atlantic, Virgin everything, Virgin Music. Richard Branson, first of all, is a wonderful person to study.
Hmm.
There's some books about him. There's autobiography by him,
Hmm.
uh, and he tells a story in one of his books about being in the British Virgin Islands in the late 1970s. And they wanted to, he was with his girlfriend. They went to the airport to catch a flight to Puerto Rico. And the airline suddenly said, the flight is canceled. We don't know when there'll be a new flight. Now, it
Hmm.
wasn't a weather issue. Everything was fine, but it was just a canceled flight. So what would you do? Like what would you do? It's the late 1970s. You don't have an iPhone or
Right.
an iPad or whatever. So most of us would be like, oh, well, I guess we have to wait until they rebook it. And you might go to a cafe, you might read a book, you might, I don't know, walk around in the sun a little bit. Richard Branson called a charter airline and basically said, how much would it cost to charter a flight from the British Virgin Islands to Puerto Rico? They gave him a price. Then he said, how many seats are on that plane? And he got the number of seats. He did a little bit of math. And then he walked around the terminal of the airport with a makeshift sign saying $39 one-way flight to Puerto Rico. And he sold every seat, and he flew to Puerto Rico on the chartered flight. And he says later on that was the birth of Virgin Airlines.
He solved the problem firsthand, right?
He did. Now, you could say, well, Richard Branson's superhuman. None of us are like that. But think about what he did. He picked up the phone. All of us can pick up the phone.
Hmm.
He probably searched in somewhere to find a charter airline, right? So maybe there was a book of back then, Yellow Pages or some kind of a book. But all of us can do that. All of us are capable of doing what Richard Branson did. So I like to say in the book that he was readily resourceful. He was resourceful in a moment of an unexpected moment, right? He didn't expect the flight to be canceled. So he was quick, he was adaptable to the situation, and he was incredibly resourceful by finding a way to fly to Puerto Rico. And he didn't even spend a lot of money. He probably spent $39 on his flight and 39 on his girlfriend's flight. That's it.
and
That's
and he
agile.
made us very happy in the way.
That's right. So the joy of agility. That's a demonstration of being an agile traveler that day, right? He was as
Mhm.
an agile traveler.
And would you say that the primary goal of agility is to solve problems?
I think so. I mean, I think it's primarily about how to succeed sooner. So, the
Right.
subtitle of the book, Joy of Agility, is how to solve problems and succeed sooner,
Right. And
right?
when was the first time that you started practicing agility? I bet it was before the Agile Manifesto.
Yeah, I mean, the I started being exposed to agility, back in the 1990s. We didn't use the word agile, right? The word agile started to come about in 2001 after the manifesto signing.
Mhm.
Back then, we just called it lightweight software methods.
Mm.
And over time, the word agile, kind of took off, and we started to think of everything that we did then as agile. Over time, I've applied agility to many, many things in life and in work, not just software development. So I
Mhm.
love software development. I always will love software development. Haven't
Mhm.
abandoned software development. However, I also see that to be really successful, especially in an organization, you need
Mhm.
agility everywhere, not just in the software department or not just
Right.
with software crafters. It really needs to be something that the whole organization wants to practice.
Right. I remember, Joshua, a few other stories that I don't know why, but every time that I had a chance to see you talking about agility or whatever, I remember one of your keynotes in the Agile conference. I remember your talks in, in Brazil and the conference that I helped organize. And as expressed in the beginning, you were doing this analogy on how famous artists they create their arts by refactoring it over time and then giving it different characteristics, and then maybe one day, eventually, they will become a well-known art. And I also remember another story that you mentioned about your daughter when she was learning how to ride a bicycle. And I remember, and by that time I didn't have any kids. Now I have four children.
That's great.
And when I was a time to to teach my kids how to ride a bicycle, I remember your story, and I remember that when I was a kid and I was trying to learn, we had the training wheels, and the training wheels would create a false sense of safety, because actually you feel safe when you have those wheels touching the ground, but maybe if you lose one of them, you don't feel as safe anymore, and also you lose performance because you can't turn on the proper position, and so on. And so I remember you talking about how you taught your daughter with those bikes with no training wheels and no pedals also. So I bought one of those to my daughter, and the result was the same. So what I'd like to to connect with this agility stuff is that do you believe that we could see the facilitators? I was talking before. Back in the day when Agile was created, we didn't have any Scrum Masters around. We probably also didn't have any Agile coaches, but still we'll do and we'll implement the principles and values of agility. And everyone in the team actually would become a kind of an agilist, right? And today, what I see is that we are creating this dependency on these training wheels, which are the current agilists. And what I have seen is that most of the teams that have an agilist only work when the agilist is there, and nobody else would embody the principles and values and then would become actually an agilist. Um, what's your vision in terms of how agility is changing? Because we had all those waves from the beginning. Like in the beginning we had extreme programming, was very technical oriented, and I remember also your book about patterns, and and then we had Scrum. We also had Lean software. Then later on, we had Lean startups, and then scaling agility, business agility, all these waves. But now we have this thing called the Agilist, and in my understanding, they are working like training wheels, and they are not really giving the team ability to think and act like a real agile person. What's your view about that? How agility is changing? How the roles within agility are impacting the results we can get?
Well, let me answer that by saying that I believe it's important for us to have a coach.
Right.
And no matter what we're doing, really, having a coach can make a huge difference because a coach can see things that you don't necessarily see
Hmm.
where you really need to improve. The coach can see this. So there's a famous surgeon named Atul Gawande. He's famous for many books, one of which is the Checklist Manifesto.
Hmm.
And he's a world class surgeon. But he noticed that, many people in sports have a coach. And then
Hmm.
in the business world, or in what the medical field, whatever, people don't have coaches. Why is that? And he went to explore this, and he asked his friend, the famous concert violinist Itzhak Perlman. He said, "Do you have a coach?" He said, "Yeah, I have a coach. It's my wife. She went to Juilliard School of Music as well as him, And at some point, she decided rather than be a performer, to be his coach. And so anywhere he performs, she observes closely and makes suggestions.
Hmm.
So Atul Gawande went and got himself a coach to actually observe him while doing surgery. It was a former professor of his. And that professor was able to note a few things where he could improve. Even a world class surgeon could improve. So
Hmm.
I believe the role of the coach is still one that's very relevant. However, I would say, yes, I agree. Everyone on the team, would ideally become an agilist, would be agile in their work, right? Well,
Hmm.
that's a goal. We'd like everybody to be quick, resourceful, and adaptable, right?
Hmm.
To work with ease and grace and quickness, right? Those are attributes of agility. So yeah, we want everyone to be agile, to have better performance, to have more joy at work or in whatever we're doing.
Hmm. Yeah, I also believe the same, and I see coaches like mentors. And if we don't have somebody to mirror ourselves in, I think it's harder. The only thing that I am trying to bring to light is that current agilists are not coaches, because coaches actually they develop people. They ask good questions, and they let people find or create understanding by um, exercising their minds and their thoughts on it. And what I've seen is that the current agilist, which we could say that was like the old Scrum Master, but now it has some other activities. They are more like playing the ceremonies. They are more like if they are not there, things won't happen. And these days I was talking to Mary and Tom Pop and Dick. I was expressing the same feeling to them, and Mary asked the question, yeah, but the ceremonies are not important. I totally agree. Which is important is the deliver of value. Is it happening? And sometimes it's not. um, and when I was talking to Pat Reed, and she used the term that got me to think. She said that agile is yesterday's weather. So we have more than 20 years of agility already. Do you think agile is something, or how you'd put agility in the current scenario, the current world? Do you think it's a thing of the past? We still have to, to promote agility, or should we just assume that this is the way of doing things nowadays?
I think agile is in the early days. I
Do you
think
think
we're
so?
I think we're kidding ourselves if we think 20 years is a long time. No,
That's
it's
insane.
it's not long at all. We're in the early days of agility and of the agile movement.
But
We are crazy to think that 20 years in, it's come and gone, it's going to go, something new is going to take its place. So that's not going to happen. And we also crazy to think that everything that needs to be understood about agility is understood. I don't think so. I think the reason I wrote the book Joy of Agility was to refocus on what agile means, because it is not the ceremonies, it's not even the outcomes. It's this way of being, which is quick, easy, and graceful. It's this way of being quick, resourceful, and adaptable. That's agility. And
right.
we can understand it better by diving deeper into the meaning of those words and into the meaning of true agility. I believe that we have a long way to go.
Right. So it would be wrong to say that if we use the term adopt agile, it would be wrong.
I mean, yeah, because I think that that almost sounds like I'm adopting a noun, right? I'm adopting a thing versus being agile.
Right.
Agility is a way, right? Agility. So if I say agile, I'm using the word as an adjective. I have to have a noun. I have to say an agile dancer, an agile team, an agile surgeon, an agile lawyer, right? I
Hmm.
cannot just say agile.
Right.
We're implementing agile. What does that mean? That doesn't mean
Hmm.
anything really. It's just not even proper English, because it's agile is an adjective. It has to further define a noun. It has to further define a thing. I'm an agile traveler, like Richard Branson that day. I'm
Mm-hmm.
an agile entrepreneur. Uh, I try to be agile on the tennis court. I play tennis, right? I try to be quick, resourceful, and adaptable to the tennis ball and to what I'm doing on the tennis court. I try to be an agile tennis player.
Mm-hmm.
You see what I
So
mean?
yeah, go ahead, please.
No, no, go ahead. Yeah, sorry.
I mean, so quick, resourceful, and adaptable are the key characteristics of who is really agile. I really like that. Yeah, for a long time I used the term agile adoption, but maybe with good intents, because the idea is to at least to help people or help organizations that are suffering to understand that there is a different way of working, and they can learn and then kind of adopt that way of working, but in the process they need to become, right, they need to be agile. And yeah,
Right.
that's nice. I like that. Another, I know that you always have, you are a very technical, strong technical person, right? All of your trainings, and you are very deep into coding and technical stuff. And I really love that. I also think that this is a really important part of agility when it comes to software development, because I just started a transformation project in a car garage. It's not any software company, and I did an assessment and got to understand their environment and enlisted their pains. And today I was talking to some of my students, and I showed them the pains that they have in a car garage. And the guy that's the owner of a software company said that, well, they seem like ours. Because basically all of the problems like operational inefficiency, lack of a process clarified, and roles and responsibilities. And if we look in a broader sense, we're going to understand that agility um, can be abstract, and can we can use it in different scenarios, different environments. And I remember that one of the things also that was not just a few things. I've learned a lot of things with you and your books and your talks. One of the things that I really like is the way you use to express. Actually, use an expression called. You say barely sufficient design, and I really like that, because when we start with something, and especially to prove value on the way, I've seen a lot of people trying to do everything that is possible right from the beginning. And by doing this, sometimes they get lost because they just lose the path to deliver the value. And by being or by delivering a barely sufficient design, but with the ability to refactor over time and improving that, that's what really matters. And in your understanding, when we talk about agility for software companies, do you believe it's important for agile coaches and agilists to understand, or maybe even to be able to put their hands on the code and to to deal with the technical parts of agility? Do you think it's important?
Absolutely. I mean, it's very difficult to be agile in software development if you're not learning quickly, failing fast, um, being able to solve problems quickly. So if it's like a conflict, a merge conflict, you don't want to wait a week to discover that something you've changed in the code broke something else, and a week later you discover it. Why not? How about minutes later after you did it, you discover the problem and fix it, right? So speed in the development process is really important. And when I say quickness or speed, I really want to be clear to your audience here.
Hmm.
There's hurrying and rushing, right?
Hmm.
Where we're going too fast, we're making lots of mistakes. And then there's quickness or speed. Those are good things.
Right.
Being quick, being fast, those are good things, but hurrying and rushing is not good. We have
Hmm.
to avoid hurrying and rushing.
Hmm.
So a lot of times people mistake the two, and they'll I just talked to a company, earlier today, and they basically said, we do a lot of fixed bid projects, and we say what we're going to deliver by a certain time. So there's a lot of iron triangle, if you will, like the fixed time, fixed scope, fixed cost. They have a little bit of wiggle room on the scope, they said. But what happens is maybe it's a 3-month contract,
Mm-hmm.
and 2 months is everything's going fine. But then the last month is crazy. Overtime, working, trying to meet the deadline. They're hurrying and they're rushing.
Mm-hmm.
And the results are not always that great. You can lose people because they don't like working all those crazy hours, or you can also see bad product being built because they're rushing and hurrying. So we try to distinguish between those two things, among others. There's all kinds of things now that when I think of agility, I think about speed, I think about balance, I think about ease, I think about being resourceful, right? Am I resentful or am I resourceful? Right? I could sit there in the airport and saying, "Damn it, the flight
Mm-hmm.
canceled." And I resent it. I resent that airline. Terrible airline. I'll never fly with them again. Or I could be resourceful and go, "I'm going to solve this problem." Yeah, there's all kinds of problems in life. How am I going to solve them? And being resourceful is joyful, right? So finding ways to do that and do it quickly, right? Branson was quick. He didn't just sit around for, 7 hours to come up with that. He was boom, quick.
Yeah, I really like that part of I remember some of my experiences with mature team where we could start delivering something to the customer less than 1 week after the kickoff. And in
Yeah.
the other hands, I've seen people spending like 2 months writing, big functional documents, delivering nothing, and lack of visibility, lack of progress, and that of course would make their customers angry. And
Yeah.
so what you bring in terms of the modern agility thing, experiment and rapid learning, um, and being safe in the process, and with this barely sufficient design thing, would be correct to say that when we are delivering things for the first time, we should assume technical debts in detriment of speed? Do you think that it's a right way to go?
I mean, I think that this is a complicated topic, but I basically would say that sometimes people over engineer something that really is just meant to live a temporary life.
Mm-hmm.
There's different kinds of code. There's code that you write really quickly to learn something fast and throw it away. There's
Mm-hmm.
code that maybe you throw it into production just to learn something quickly and then you throw it out, right? So it's not meant to live a long life.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's in production, but it's not actually production code. Production code is code that should be living a long life and is well tested and all that. But not everything is production code when you're creating, right? Sometimes an artist is creating a sketch. It's not the final product. Sometimes
Mm-hmm.
a software artist is quickly creating something very fast without automated tests, without fine refactoring, without good naming, without good design. They're just throwing it together in order to like learn something quickly from the market, from the customer. High
Mm-hmm.
speed learning. And then they have the discipline to say, great, we learned something now. If we do want to build this for real, let's engineer it. Let's actually do it
Mm-hmm.
well. That's shifting your styles. So you don't have one style, right? You have
Mm-hmm.
many styles that you use depending upon the context.
Mm-hmm. So, if I'm testing something, it's okay if I don't do automated testing. It's okay if I don't use all the right patterns and so on. I totally agree. You
Yeah.
know, there are different cultures, and I think being in the Agile Alliance and traveling all over, understanding how agility works in other places helped me to also understand that different cultures may give you different results. Like in Brazil, unfortunately, we have a tendency to make temporary things the definitive things. Like, and I've seen a lot of people writing code with this in mind, like, oh, this is going to be temporary, but it's there for 10 years. And because they've built it with a temporary mindset, of course they didn't use any of the good practice, engineering practices of test automation, refactoring, TDD, clean code, and so on. And some of these companies have grown. Like, I've run into two cases where companies were around for more than 20 years and they have grown a lot. Like, they have really conquered a big market in Brazil, and but with very old technologies and legacy code, with all of these technical debts, we would say, things written in Delphi, in COBOL, and but now they have like 15 million lines of code that are giving them a hard time. And if you run into one of these cases, what would be your recommendation? Because these guys are big; they have a lot of responsibility in their hands, but they have this kind of inability to change because of the heavy burden of the legacy that they have. What would be your recommendation? How could they find joy? How could they get out of the mess?
One thing is they have to basically look at balance and realize the connection between balance and speed. So if you're unbalanced, you will not be fast. And if that means that you look at your technical debt and you say, we're in terms of balance, we're completely off balance here. We barely ever spend time working to pay down technical debt. We spend all of our time up here building new functionality,
Hmm.
and it's unbalanced. We have to find the right balance between maintenance work,
Right.
improving what we did already from the past, and then new work. We have to find the right balance, because if we have the wrong balance, it's going to slow us down in the marketplace.
Hmm.
So of course we need to be rewriting things, simplifying them. um, Code is a lot like a living thing that needs attention. It starts to rot if you don't
Hmm.
regularly look at it and see what it needs, give it some love, right? So that could
Hmm.
be rewriting it, that could be putting tests around it. um, it's impossible to not have to do that with software tends to rot just like a
Right.
garden, right? So
I I really like this idea of balance, and I've learned the first time that I got in contact with agile, lean and agile, was back in 2003, by the book of via the book of Marathon, the first book that they had. And I remember that by that time, we didn't want to be agile. We just wanted to solve our problems, and we had a lot of them because nobody used test automation, nobody would have visual management, so we didn't have any kind of flow management to help us achieve this balance, and was really complete chaos, I think, in that way. And um, and then, because of the waves, also because of extreme programming, and we had a lot of technical debts, we started improving on technicality, like writing tests and putting on continuous integration, putting on continuous delivery. And that was by 2004, a long time ago. And by improving our technical side, we were able to solve some of the problems we had, like defects into production and anger customers. But then we realized that we were still delivering. We were not meeting our deadlines. We were delaying deliverables and things like that. So I understood that we were missing something. We were writing better code, but we were not yet delivering on time to the customers, which also wouldn't serve, because we would better deliver on time to serve the purpose of the customer. And then I started playing with a little bit of a pull system, visual management, some sort of Scrum or Kanban, and that improved. Now we were able to deliver on time and with a proper quality, I would say, but sometimes we would be delivering with the right quality and on time what the customer didn't want. Uh, we were missing the, let's say, the business side. And that was when I understood that we need balance between our efforts in terms of strategy management, tactical management, and then engineering. And that
Yes.
was when I came first time that I understood this balance that is needed. I came up with the lean pyramid, the framework that I created, and so far have helped me to overcome these situations. And one of the things that I've learned along the way is that when we don't have balance, and I've learned that with capoeira. You know capoeira, the Brazilian
I
art.
know. I know.
I am a capoeirista since I was 18 years old, and I've learned to handstand for a long time. And doing the analogy with physical balance of the body to like do handstands, and then management of a company, I understood that if we have no balance, it's really hard to get to the balanced position, to absolute balanced position. We will struggle a little bit. We may get hurt. It's not going to be easy. But I understand that once we get there, it's going to be much easier to stay there. And with the handstands, for example, if we are not in balance, we will, move all of the body, the arms, and sometimes we can get the shoulders hurt and things like that. But if you get to the point where you can feel that you have the balance, the only thing I need to do to keep my body in the handstand position is to press in my fingers in the ground. So the effort to keep in a balanced position after we get there, it's much easier. And that's basically what I try to, to foment, is the idea that we need to not only to be concerned about practice such as backlog management, visual management, all the things that will help us to do the tactical management, but what kind of value are we delivering to our customers? What they really want, and then what are the engineering that we will need to do that? And that's like when we put all that together, I think it's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. This is like, I think, a very common thing that we all learn at some point is no matter how good our process is, if we're building the wrong thing, it doesn't make any difference really. So we have to also have enough time spent validating and understanding our users to figure out what do they really need, right? What's really going to make a difference in their lives, and make sure that we've validated it. We figured out that yes, enough customers really need this. We're going to build this thing, versus just blindly building features based on a hunch, that they're going to want it, and not really understanding their pain, right?
Yeah,
If we can really understand their pain, and so back to balance, you've got to get the right balance of all of those things:
yeah,
the validation of ideas, the teamwork, the engineering, uh, even salespeople, sales quotas, right? People have sales quotas, and they have marketing people doing things. How do we have empathy for them? How do we understand their pressure? Because if they're going to put pressure on a team, well, let's understand it. Let's understand what kind of pressure are they experiencing? What kind of pressure is the development team experiencing? What kind of pressure are the executives experiencing? Where is the pressure? So we can figure out a way to balance it all, right?
hmm
That's to me, that's one of the great tricks of this all, is to just figure out, what needs to be balanced. And
and
go ahead.
So, sometimes it's hard. It's harder to do that when we have silos, right? Because
Oh yeah,
people, like you mentioned, the different areas. But when these different areas don't talk to each other, it's really hard.
very
Um,
difficult. Very
yeah,
difficult when they're.
I've seen two. Not so rare. Actually, it's rather common to see that. Some companies, some software companies, especially those that develop products, I've seen some of them separating a product team from the development team, and then separating the development team from the maintenance team. What do you have to say about those structures?
I mean, I truly do not like having the separation there. I don't have a problem with there being a product development organization or or a, like so PM group of people, but if and a dev group of people, right? So here's where we have certain, departments in the company, great. But if we're working on an initiative together, if we're trying to deliver something for the customer, we need to be working together. We're one team working together to build it. And that's just critical for, high speed collaboration. Trying to coordinate work between silos is very unfortunate. It's very slow. Not something I recommend very much.
Hmm. Yeah, me neither. Uh, and that's why I like to hear your voice, because you know people hear you, and I think this is really important. Whenever we separate and we cause handoffs from one side to another, I think it's really hard. I prefer the we are in this together. If we make any problems, like we generated bugs or defects or whatever, it's our responsibility to fix, not somebody
Yeah,
else.
that's right. As a team, it's our responsibility. The team has a responsibility to create an excellent product or service, and the team has an excellent as a responsibility to produce high quality and even to enjoy work. Right? We could say that that's important too.
Hmm.
Um, I'm not a big fan of ownership of a certain thing like product ownership in terms
Hmm.
of a single person owning that.
Right. Right.
Definitely not a fan. I know that Mary and Tom Poppendieck are not a fan. I know Don Reinertson, who wrote Principles of Product Development Flow, not a fan of. I tell a story in the book Joy of Agility of a summer intern at Amazon.
Hmm.
This was many years ago, and the summer intern basically noticed that when people check out at Amazon, they've got their cart filled, they check out, nothing was saying to them, hey, would you also be interested in these other products? Which is something that, when you're at a grocery store and you're checking out, they have all of those cookies, candy,
Uh-huh.
they have magazines, they have things that you might want to get. But this intern, summer intern, right? He noticed that Amazon didn't have this. And he said, why don't we have that? That would be great. In fact, we know what's in a person's cart and we can recommend things. It's far better than a grocery store, in a physical
Mhm.
world. We can recommend exact things to go along with what's in their cart. Why don't we do that? Now, a senior executive said, nope, nope, we don't want to bother the customer when they're first checking out, because checking out and paying us money, that's the most important thing. Don't want to bother them with suggestions to buy other stuff. So we're not going to do it. Don't do it. The summer intern was like, that's nuts. I'm going to write something. And so luckily, Amazon had a way to experiment with ideas, right? A
Mhm.
quantitative way to experiment. So you could write some code, put it in like a simulated environment, and see what would result. And the results were very, very promising. So promising that they basically said to him, okay, not the VP. The VP that said no was he had no interest. But other people said, this is promising. Let's actually do a test on a tiny percentage of Amazon customers and see what happens. So they wrote some more code, just quick, right? This is fastly written code, does not have a lot of automated testing. It's just really rolled fast just to test something. And what the test showed was that Amazon could make a large sum of money by having these suggestions in place. A large, so large of a sum of money that they immediately formed a team to build these features in. This kind of shopping right at the end when you're checking out. Um, the product owner, I mean, if one person controlled what was being built, that would not work too well. Now, a good product owner won't do that. But in my experience, the whole team ought to own the act of product ownership, the act of creating awesome customers and an awesome company. So that one solo, summer intern made a fortune for Amazon by insisting on this feature. And good ideas can come from anyone on a team. It's unbalanced to me if only one person has that control and the others don't. So interesting.
Yeah, very interesting, and probably the VP could get fired.
Maybe I don't know if that happened, but it's
Yeah, I really like the idea that and I've seen that quite a few times also, that if the product owner is not around, people don't know how to prioritize their work. And I think that's terrible because, in my understanding, the team would have a common, kind of a common currency that everybody could use to evaluate things, and then use the same rationale that the product manager would use to prioritize. But instead of doing that, they don't create this sense of a shared ownership or shared responsibility to the product. And I think this is one very core thing to agility. Um,
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
yeah, very nice, Joshua. Before we are coming to an end, but before we wrap up the session, I know you've been running industrial logic for a long time already. I don't know how many years, but probably about 20 years or so, or more. And I remember that, well, when I met you, you were already into the education business, and you had those CDs that would chip and then, teach people refactoring, teach people coding and things like that. How industrial logic is helping its customers today? How you deliver value to your customers today?
I mean, our motto is very simple, which is better software sooner. And
Hmm.
that means that we're helping them to streamline the entire software development process from validation of ideas and product thinking and product design down to writing the code and deploying it to production safely. So the entire life cycle of building a software product. We also do work with companies that don't make software, that just want to be more agile, and we're applying their years of agile thinking and lean thinking to their problems, whether
Hmm.
that's creating medicines or working with you know machines of all kinds that need to come together quickly to produce things for the world. There's just lots of examples that are beyond software where the exact same ideas that we
Hmm.
apply to software development help people in their product or service creation, right? To
Hmm.
be to do it faster, to do it sooner, to do it with high quality and all that. So a lot of like, I think you've seen this, because you've been doing this a long time. You've seen it as well, right?
Hmm.
Helping the company you're helping now, um, there's no software, but the same
Yeah.
ideas apply, right? How can you test things quickly? How can you integrate quickly? How can you learn faster? Um, that stuff's universal.
Yeah, yeah. I've spent 3 years in an energy company doing the same thing, and it's incredible because we're not talking about software. We're talking about generation, transmission, and distribution of energy, and running those kind of projects, which are big projects. They cannot refactor after they start, and it's different. But yet the collaboration and the integration that you said is really the same, and I love it.
Yeah.
And do you do this in in the past? You had the virtual trainings. Do you have it doing in a digital way, or do you go with your consultants? And how is the distribution of your delivery?
Yeah, I mean, we basically we do a mixture of we build software for companies today as well. So we actually do the work of building the software for them. We consult and coach and mentor teams. Our e-learning remains an online learning environment that we use quite a bit in our training. So it's part and parcel of our training, which we do in person and online. When we do either one, in person or online, we're often using our e-learning as well because it's a resource from which you can learn. So anything we can do to move the needle to make an actual change and improvement is what we care about. We're not into certifications. We don't certify people. We never have. We are
Hmm.
interested in training people. We're interested in mentoring and coaching them, and then sometimes we find that some companies just need us to do the work and see what it's like. How does industrial logic build a point of sale system, for example? Right?
Hmm.
We're doing such a thing. We're building a point of sale system for a large company. Um, Well, how do you do it? What do you do? What's the state of the art? And we're applying all of the things we know from product management and product validation, everything from the product side of things down to the core of development and deploying to tablets and Android devices and all kinds of things. Um, Walking the talk so the company can see, this is how we can do development. This is how we can be agile in software development.
Hmm. And that's awesome. I really appreciate everything that you have been doing, and all the contributions you have for the community. I've watched a lot of your shows, and bringing in some people that I also admire. So thank you very much, Joshua, for your time. For this talk and for sharing your enlightenment with us. And I hope you can come back to Brazil in the near future. And if we can help with that, just let me know. It will be my pleasure.
I would love to come back, and I really appreciate your support. And I know you've done a lot for the Agile community. I know you're on the board of the Agile Alliance for many years, and
Yeah.
all the travel and hard work that's associated with that, plus doing this stuff with your companies over the years. And you've probably had a huge impact, especially in South America, but also elsewhere in the world. So it's a pleasure to be on your show. I would love to come back to Brazil. I love it there. I miss it, and COVID slowed things down a bit, but definitely be back, especially Florianopolis, which is a
Yeah.
beautiful place to live. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
I was talking to Dana Larson these days. She said the same. And that will
Yeah,
spark some ideas in my head.
right. We need to
Why
have
not?
a big reunion with some caipirinhas.
Yes, yes, why not?
Just one caipirinha. We're getting older.
Yes, yes, that's kind of strong. If I get more than one, I would go crazy. Man, thank you so much for our time again, and let's keep in touch, and maybe in the near future we can make this reunion happen.
I would love that. Thank you so much, Samuel.
Thank you. Cheers.
Cheers.